If you guys are not comfortable about that, please put something in the chat, but I am recording this session. So how many of you are currently investing in real estate? I know Kathy is. Who else? I know Dixon is. Okay, Marty from Ottawa. Mitch from, I forget where you're from. Michigan? No, that's
New
Dixon.
Mexico.
Pardon me?
New Mexico?
Oh
Columbus,
yeah, New Mexico. That's
I better forget
interesting
myself.
because I actually had somebody yesterday I was talking to who was just moving to Santa Fe. So I don't hear New Mexico every day, but there you go. Michael is invested in Ontario, but not yet the US, right, Michael? I know we've looked at some properties, but you're not yet down here. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Martin, what about you? Not Marty, Martin.
Real estate throughout the retirement home, and
But not only Canada or?
yes, only in Canada.
Only.
Yeah, only in Quebec City now.
How is the real estate in Quebec City?
It's crazy.
Really? So just like everywhere.
Really, really crazy. It's like 25% grow in the past 8 months.
It's a crazy market. Yes, Eleonora. Were you waving? Do you want to say something? Oh, she's gone. Okay, anybody else? What about you, Monica? Are you currently an investor?
Yeah, I'm primarily the GTA, Toronto, Mississauga.
Yeah, where they charge a huge amount for land transfer tax. That could literally kill you or kill your upside on the deal, right? So the challenge is, how do you get into US real estate? And how do you get a visa if you get into US real estate? And potentially also, if you don't want to invest in real estate or you don't want to use that as your path to a visa, what other business options are available? Now, I will say that franchises are great as business options for for people that are investing across borders, especially those that are seeking visas. The problem is that the franchise takes a lot of fees. I just had a client today, literally, that's been looking at, it was his second franchise that he wanted to invest in. And at I was advising him, please get the franchise disclosure documents reviewed by my colleague who does, who's a franchise lawyer. And he just kind of waited and waited. He wanted to go through various processes. And sure enough, we had it reviewed and the fees are exorbitantly high. And he's going to have to go and look for another opportunity. Well, he doesn't have to, but I mean, it's just not a feasible option. So it's important when you're creating that investment path across borders, not only that you make sure that the business that you're investing into or you're developing is going to be a moneymaker, but also that it's going to help you qualify for potentially a visa. And it's really important that you look at these options from the get-go. In other words, you don't want to start investing or building your business and then 6 months or 6 years down the road say, oh, I want a visa after all, because then you're going to have to retrace your steps potentially and deal with the fact that you didn't look at those options when you started. Now, Michael is a tax accountant. He specializes in all kinds of cross-border guidance and so on. So Michael, would you recommend, and I already know the answer, so I can ask you, would you ever recommend that somebody invest in their personal name in the US?
No.
I knew there wasn't a trick question. I knew that was going to be the answer. If he said yes, I would have punched him through the screen, but there was no way. So why is that?
What about LLC?
Pardon me?
What about LLC?
So no, not an LLC.
That's a question that comes up a lot, and especially if you're talking to US accountants, the first thing out of their mouth is
LLC.
Set up an LLC. And they don't always ask you what your citizenship is when they're telling you that.
They don't care.
Yeah. Canadians should never, ever, 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 ever hold LLCs directly.
Directly, exactly. Through a holding company, for sure.
Yeah.
Through a limited partnership,
right.
Absolutely. But directly, forget about it. Why? Why,
double
Michael?
taxation. You get taxed twice.
It's a mess. And how many people would you guess, because I've been doing some research on this, not people, but what percentage of Canadians do this?
It'd only be a guess, but I'd guess probably close to half.
At least, I would say at least. Why?
But if you buy real estate, then what corporation you?
No, it doesn't matter. Here's why. So the problem is, and here's a perfect example. Carolyn Ricciardi, who is where I met Nicolette, and she's a business partner of mine. She runs Creative Real Estate Academy out of Calgary. She started investing in real estate in Columbus, Ohio. And she's very open about this, so I'm not disclosing private information, okay? Just for you, Maria Rosario. But she hired fortune builders, or she paid fortune builders to coach her. Now, unlike Mike Wolf Mastery or our coaching program or so many others, fortune builders is US based. And they don't, like Michael said, really care about where you're from. They only care about you getting, I'm sorry, somebody just texted me, I got distracted. They only care about you investing and paying them money to help them invest. They don't care about the repercussions for you from the CRA. They don't even know what the CRA is. And if they do, they don't care. So the point is that it's not one size fits all. And this answer that Michael just gave that I agree with about the LLC is going to be different if you're from Colombia, or if you're from Israel, or if you're from Brazil, or if you're from Mexico. Why? Because the CRA has specific rules and a specific way of dealing with these issues and LLCs. Not everybody has that challenge, okay? If you set up an LLC already, let's say that you're already invested in the US through an LLC, my strong recommendation is sell it back to a limited partnership or another type of holding company structure. So you're going to roll it back into that structure so that you can then have that in between that you need, so that the LLC is not going to be subject to double taxation.
Lauren, there's a question here, and I'm
Yes.
asking also on my behalf. Monica wanted to know if that holding company needs to be a Canadian holding company or a US holding company, or what do you suggest?
So and this answer is going to be dependent on if you're planning to get a visa or not, okay? The holding company itself is American. The owner of that holding company, depending on if it's a limited partnership or maybe a C Corp, that could be Canadian owned. For example, if it's a limited partnership, your general partner could be a Canadian company, or it could be you personally. And that's going to depend on legal structure and all of that. Hi, Neil. Nice to see you. So it's going to depend on how that structure works. And it's not one size fits all. So everybody needs to look at their own structure, okay? It doesn't mean that you're going to have a problem if you have an LLC already. It just means that the LLC should be backed into this holding company structure so you aren't subject to double taxation. But you know what? Setting up an LLC is cheap, it's easy, and it's available, and it's everywhere on the internet. Right, Mitch? So everybody thinks, oh, if it's okay for Americans, it's okay for us, and it's not. And that's a challenge. So we have to make sure that we look at each company, or sorry, each client. Did I just say it the Canadian way? Individually. Okay.
But the question is,
all Canada, so I'm going to be speaking sorry by the end of
Lauren,
yeah.
Can I have a question, please? It's a very simple question. I understand that you don't, like, you try not to give the direct answer, right? I mean, let's say you.
I am a lawyer after all.
I know. Let's say ES visa, right? Let's say you're buying real estate, correct? To get a E2 visa. Then what structure should be? It's like very simple question. I understand that it depends. It's not a very simple
question.
But what structure should be? It's limited partnership, holding company. It should be limited partnership.
It's not a very simple. I'm sorry, but it's not. It's not one size fits all. Generally, for most Canadians, it's going to be an LP, limited partnership, as the holding company, and then your LLCs or C Corps coming out from there. Generally.
But limited partnership American, right? US
yes.
partnership.
Correct. Everything is American. The owners could be Canadian, but the limited partnership is set up in the US.
Okay, understood.
But that's, again, okay, and I want to go back, and I'm going to show my slides in a minute, which obviously have my disclaimer. Really important to understand, I am not providing legal advice in this forum. I can't. Until we're engaged, I'm not allowed to do that. So all I'm doing is giving you general information that basically is not across the board, but it's pretty known. And I have an asset protection partner that sets up, and I actually have an asset protection partner and a securities and transactional partner. Why? A lot of Canadians want to set up these fractional ownership models right now. Michael, I'm sure you know of this, right? You've probably heard people talking about it in Mike's group, because a lot of people want to, you know, kind of like a timeshare, like to own a piece of the bigger business or share together. And there is a way to do that. But again, I'm not the one to advise. So I bring in the expert on that. When it comes to the asset protection and setting up your structure, we have to make sure that we look at what your short and long-term goals are before we give that flat across the board answer. Generally, it will be a limited partnership, but in some cases, you don't want that. In some cases, you may want a C Corp as the holding company. It really just depends on your particular circumstances and goals. Would a US Corp work for an E2 visa? Yes, it does not have to be an LLP. It can definitely be a C Corp, but there's no requirement of a type of entity. It just needs to be an entity to qualify for an application for an E2 visa. Okay. So I'm going to flip over to my slides for a few minutes, and then we'll come back to questions if that's okay with everybody. And I just want to grab my slides here. Anybody have any other questions while I'm grabbing the slides?
There's one question that showed up from Kathy that said, would a US Corp work for E2 visa? Does it have to be an LLP?
I think I just answered no.
Yes, you did.
Thank you. No, it doesn't have to be an LLP, just to re-answer it. I'm sorry for, here we go. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you guys see my screen now?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. So here's my disclaimer. This is like the most important part of the presentation. Please don't rely on anything that we're sharing in here. If you'd like to set up a consult, obviously I'm going to offer that to you at the end. And I would strongly recommend that. Also, Eleonora attended a session I did a couple of months ago on the 10 steps, which we will go through to immigrate through real estate. And this 10-step session walks you through how to accomplish each of these goals, because some of the stuff you're going to have to do on your own, whether or not you want, whether you want to invest and or immigrate, okay? So there's 8 steps to invest across borders and 10 steps to immigrate through real estate. These are the most important people that are on your cross-border team. Banking, obviously, legal team, due diligence and deal analysis for any, not only real estate, but also a business transaction if you're investing in a business. As I said, I have 3 of them going on right now. Tax, financial, and accounting professionals like Michael, and somebody south of the border, or a duly licensed CPA. Logistics experts. Why would they be important? Well, because you need to understand the elements of what's going on. Now, for my clients, I'm that person because I'm managing the logistics and keeping kind of things flowing nicely, hopefully, for the most part. And I'm going to try to make sure I could see everybody on here. Okay, good. Real estate financing and capital advisors. So like I was telling you about that new financing option that I have for people with buying up to 4 plexes. Capital advisors is, you know, if you're buying a commercial, do you have access to capital? How does that look? You want to make sure also that whatever you're doing meets with your financial advisor's guidance. Like, for example, if you have a financial advisor in Canada, you want to make sure that that financial advisor knows what you're doing, because it's going to impact your net worth up there, right? Or down here as well. Real estate professionals. I'll tell you something. I know a lot of people try to get off-market deals, but those of us that are real estate professionals will tell you that we can get you the off-market deals a lot better than you can get your own. And I'm not saying that you're not going to ever find something off-market, but working with a realtor is always recommended. Okay, it's going to cost you a tiny bit more, but it's going to save you so much in the long run. Cross-border experts. Okay, well, that's super important no matter where you're from. If you're from Mexico, or you're investing into Mexico or Chile or Peru or Colombia or Brazil or Canada, you need people that understand both sides, not just the one side like fortune builders. Oh, let's invest in the US. No, because what happens to me when I go home? What happens when I take the money out of the country? Eventually that's going to happen, especially if you're staying in that country. So these are all key critical people in the process. these are the different types of real estate investments that, you know, are generally available. And the only one that will okay, I'm not going to tell you. I just pointed to it, so I'm going to move my mouse and hopefully you guys didn't see it. Which one of these would never directly get you into a visa? There's only one.
Rent.
I would guess REITs,
Yeah. Why?
because a REIT is like an investment fund. It's not-
Exactly.
yeah.
So no syndication, no REIT, nothing passive. That's never going to work. The whole key about qualifying for an immigration visa is that your business has to be active. And to be active, you can't be in a passive syndication or a REIT. Okay? So one of the really important things to understand, and the distinction between why so many people think real estate investment can never pave a path to immigration, is because it's usually passive. Otherwise, you know, we want to invest in real estate so we can have passive income, right? Isn't that what we're taught? Multiple streams of income. But if you invest in real estate, if you invest in real estate and turn it into a business versus a hobby, something that you need boots on the ground, that you need to run the business, you need to actively be involved, you need to be managing your teams that are renovating the properties or that are renting the facilities or whatever the case may be, then it's an active business and then you can get a visa. Are there any questions about that? Because usually that's a sticking point.
Then if I buy, let's say, property management company, right? It's okay, right, for this purpose?
Usually, yeah.
And let's say I can hire minimum 2 people, correct?
Okay, let's say.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. That was a question. Yes, minimum 2. I always recommend at least 3 over the 5 years. 1 should be hired by the time you apply for the visa. Okay. Again, these are just generalizations. Can real estate
So, Lauren, is it
investment?
possible- I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
go
is
ahead,
it
Mitch.
possible to go to full size to a full screen mode?
Can I go to a full screen mode? When I do that, I don't, it doesn't go very well, but let me try.
Okay.
View. Enter full screen. Yeah, okay, we'll try it. Can you see it better now?
It looks the same for me.
Well, this is full screen according to what I just clicked, so I apologize, but
Okay, no worries.
let's see.
I think he means go into slideshow mode.
Yeah, I don't love slideshow mode, so I apologize. I like to see the next slide, so I'm sorry. This is
No
gonna.
worries.
I made it a little bigger. Hopefully, it's easier to see. Okay.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank
Lauren,
you.
quick
And I'll
question.
share the recording with you guys as well. Okay, so you can watch this again and again. And also, just so you know, I did create, and I'll share this in the chat. I'm not sure if I already shared it in the chat, but there's a, and I can't do it now that I'm in full screen, but I will share it later. I created an evergreen webinar on how to immigrate through real estate, very specifically focused on this whole process. And I'll be happy to share that with you guys. You just have to download it. It's free. Okay.
Lauren, I got a quick question for you.
Yes, Neil.
What percentage has to be passive versus active in terms of your investment portfolio?
There's no percentage. It's kind of like, it's really just about looking at the business as a whole and figuring out that what makes sense. So in other words, obviously, some people have passive properties or flips involved in their portfolio, right? As long as that's not the leader, but instead you have, a flip here and there, and then you're doing the buy and hold, or you're doing the renovation and all of that. The flip is okay as long as that's not your main business, unless you're doing 40 flips, because it's about volume and it's about needing to be here to run the business. So it's very discretionary. And I hate to answer like a lawyer, but that's the reality. It's very discretionary. So it's just like somebody asking me, and I think you asked me this the other day, or certainly everybody does almost every day, how much do I have to invest? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But there's no, in E2, which is the main visa that we're going to discuss here, and I'm going to go down to my slide that it's not in here. Darn it. Okay. There's a slide that I want to go through that we'll go through after I go through these slides. and it's called Visa Avatars, and it talks about all the different visas and how you can qualify for them. The E2 is the main visa that real estate investors obtain. And the E2 is available to Canadians, to Mexicans, to Colombians, not Brazilians, to Israelis, not Venezuelans, yes, Argentinians, it's no Peruvians. So in other words, if you qualify for an E2, and I apologize, but I need to go back to this if that's okay. I'm sorry, Mitch, I'll make it bigger for you, but I need to be able to access my other slides. So if you're from one of those other countries, you have to find another avenue. But if you're from Canada or one of the E2 countries, you're qualified for what's called a treaty investor visa. And a treaty investor visa is based on substantial investment in a non-marginal business. And how is that determined? That's where the discretion comes in. There's no actual minimum investment threshold. And I'm going to add some slides. Okay, hold on, I'm sorry. By the way, if anybody wants to see something really cool, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see it, or is my virtual background backing it? Can you see this thing?
No.
Now?
No,
See it?
No. Mm-mm.
No?
a bit,
No.
but it's small.
Okay, this thing I have is called Remarkable, and it's this notepad that's like an electronic notepad, and you can write on it, and then you transpose your notes into electronically, and I love it because I like to write notes. So don't worry, I don't have an affiliate relationship with them. I just happen to love it. And you can also DocuSign things on there. Super cool, okay? Anyway, back to what we were talking about. So can real estate investments qualify for business visas? Yes, in certain cases. Now the key, Neil, as kind of related to what you asked, is that it can't be passive or marginal. So if flipping is passive or marginal in the US, in Canada, it's not. It's considered an active business. In the US, it's flipping. As I say, must pass active tests. Won't qualify if it's a rental property that you hold title and not much more. If it's a REIT, you know, or a syndicate, if it's an asset holding company model, or if it's buy and flip. Okay, so none of those are going to qualify for an E2 visa because they're passive. If you put those three together and add a couple of buy and hold or Airbnb, then perhaps, yes, you can qualify. Okay, we want to make sure that we can show that you are directing and managing the business. Now, as Eleonora asked, and we'll talk about this when I go to my 10 steps to immigrate through real estate, you can use a property management company as your leader, as the one that the business that you use to get the visa. And then in the business plan, we talk about, okay, we're doing the property management company. That's our initial investment. And then we're adding properties to our portfolio. And that's part of our investment as we continue to grow the business so that you're expanding the business. They don't just want to see that it's static. They want to see that you're growing the business and hiring people and having an economic impact. Okay, so you can invest in real estate as long as you contemplate it in that business plan, right? So as I said here at the bottom, consider options such as property management company or other franchises. There's home inspection companies, there's insurance companies. One of my colleagues invested in an insurance company. He is, like Michael, a CPA, and he's just waiting for his E2 and E2 interview. So, but when he's here, he's going to be investing in real estate. It's just that he chose to do a franchise model, which can be a very successful way and an easy path because you don't have to buy so many properties. To qualify for real estate investment, you should be doing one or many of these activities: buy, rent, BRRRR, the BRRRR method, of course, most of us know that, managing multiple rental properties on an ongoing basis. It can't just be seasonal. So you have to have something on the off season, like in Florida, for example, managing commercial properties. And by the way, I am the co-chair of International Investment, the International Investment Committee for EXP Commercial. I moved my license over to commercial about 3 weeks ago. So it's, and you know, I love being on the commercial side because I'm doing deals, and that's what I do. I don't show houses. I refer people to my colleagues that show the properties, help you get, like, I love multifamily, big demand for multifamily. That's commercial. So it all makes sense, right? Airbnb, why does that work? Because there's ongoing logistics, there's ongoing business, there's people changing every few nights. If you have, year-long rentals everywhere, it's not going to work because that's too passive. You're not managing anything. There's not really business. That's the passive thing, right? Mobile homes are great. Self-storage, I love self-storage. Managing multifamily properties and many other opportunities, okay? And I'm going to move my 10-step guide up. This is my favorite slide. This is something that I created. This is my signature program. This is what Eleonora came to the course about, 10 steps to immigrate through real estate. And these steps are not static, they're fluid. And they change depending on the economy, depending on the real estate market, and depending on where you're from. Because the Canadian consulate is really tough, but I've never had a denial. They're tough, but I've never had a denial. So as long as you do what they want, you're going to get approved for your visa, okay? So here's the suggested minimum of 150 to 200. I'd prefer to see $250,000 invested out of pocket in $1 million at least worth of real estate. So you can finance the balance. And as I say, we can get you financing. And then at least 5 doors. And that's going to depend on how those 5 doors are broken up, how those 5 doors are showing a return, how that all looks in terms of not just your investment, but your return. So it's the terminology in the E2 is you have to make a substantial investment in a non-marginal business. Now, for any lawyers in the room, Maria, what the heck does that mean? It's a legal term and it's discretionary. And so you have to be subjective. And so the more that you invest, the better, but maybe not. Because if you buy 2 single-family properties for 10 million, it doesn't mean that you're going to qualify. But you may buy 2 multifamily 10-unit or 20-unit apartment buildings for $1 million and qualify. So that's where somebody like myself comes in, and my superpower is figuring out, does this meet the requirements? Does this not meet the requirements? How can we make it meet the requirements? Okay. So then you have cross-border tax guidance, very, very important and essential to a sound strategy. That comes in before you set up your companies, because I want you to have that cross-border advice before you set up your entities. I'm not responsible for taxes. I am not a tax expert. I don't play one on TV, and I never will. Okay, I go to tax experts for my own taxes. So why am I going to pretend to do that, right, Maria? That would be a bad idea. Okay, I know this, I know what I know how to get across borders, I know how to set this all up, but I don't know taxes. So we bring that expert in. Asset protection. How do you protect your estate in Canada? How do you make sure that you protect your investments here? You need to, generally the rule of thumb is you don't want any one entity to own or to hold more than 500,000 in investments. Now, if you're buying $1 million property, obviously you don't have a choice, but generally speaking, you want to have separate entities to protect each $500,000 worth of investment. The professional consulting, I can't underscore that enough, making sure that you have all of the professionals in place that I talked about at the beginning. Source of funds and financing, it's essential that all funds are clearly sourced. Now, what that means is you can't, let's say Neil wanted to set up shop and get an E2 visa, which eventually he probably will. He can't say, oh, I got the money from my friend Joe. And there's no path to Joe. And we don't know where Joe got the money, because there's a lot of money laundering, a lot of drug money, a lot of, terrorism money, a lot of not clean money. And it's super important to be able to source that in your personal name. So when it's in the US, it must be in your personal name. So let's say you have a business in the US already, and you have an income in the US, or you have money in a bank account. You still have to show where that money came from if it's going to be part of your investment. Okay? Very, very important. Business plan. We've been writing business plans for over 20 years. That's actually how I got into the business of immigration, because I was writing immigration business plans. And I also myself immigrated from that country to the north. And I'll tell you my story in just a minute. Some of you have heard it, but I'll tell you really briefly. But a professionally drafted business plan is going to make the difference between a successful and an unsuccessful immigration path. I have a client. He was a friend of mine in Toronto. We lost touch for many years. He was denied his visa, his E2, I guess 3 years ago now. And somehow I showed up on LinkedIn. He reached out to me. We hadn't spoken in, I don't know, 5 years. We had some kind of falling out. I turned the guy's denial into an approval. He literally thinks I walk on water, which I do not. But, you know, it's because he wrote his own business plan. His lawyer didn't advise him properly. We completely transitioned his business from what could have been seen as, it's not really a significant business, into something that was viable. And he's now in his 3rd year of his E2 visa. So, and he and his wife just bought a house here. So it's, you know, it makes me feel good to be able to make that impact on people. And he's so excited when he can talk to somebody and tell them the story. He's like, like yesterday, he called me and go, if those 2 people don't hire you, I don't know what to tell you. They're crazy. They should go run away to another country, far, far away from anywhere here. And I'm like, okay, don't worry. He says, I'm just, you know, they need to hire you. They need to know what they're doing. You might be a little bit more, but you're so worth it. And it's just very cute. It makes me feel good to know I made that much difference in their lives. And then, of course, number 9 is your fun stuff, your legal petition and your filing fees. So your legal petition. So I am the quarterback. I bring in the immigration attorney under me that is the best person for the job, whether it's an E2 or an EB1 or an EB5 or an E1 or whatever the visa is, and that's going to mesh the best with you. For example, if I have a Russian speaker, I might bring in my Russian speaking immigration attorney. If I have a Spanish speaker, same deal. If I have a French speaker, same deal, okay? Just because there's always a comfort level with having that direct, you know, if that's your native language, sometimes people want to communicate with a lawyer that speaks that native language. I am not fluent in French. I speak it, okay? My Hebrew is my Spanish is non-existent, and my Portuguese is a little bit because my sister-in-law is from Brazil. So I know my limitations. I'm not going to try to practice law in French because that's not what I do, okay? And if I did, you guys would be laughing at me every day of the week. My accent sucks. Anyway, but that's because I don't use it very much. And, you know, my brother, he speaks fluent Portuguese. Why? Because he didn't care and he just would talk. And now he's fluent, like literally fluent. It's unbelievable. So you do your legal petition and your filing, and then you have your visa success. Now, what happens after you get your visa? Can anybody tell me? Nobody? Do you have to maybe run the business? Do you have to maybe be successful in running the business so you could maybe renew your visa or maybe transition to a green card at some point through a different path? Because at the end of the day, getting the visa is only the starting point. That's when the work starts, because now you have to build your business and do what you said you're going to do in the business plan. Let me tell you, COVID impacted that a lot. Because a lot of E2 visa holders were here, like all of a sudden they're, you know, if they invested in a cruise planner's business, think about it. If they bought a cruise planner's franchise, they didn't expect to be basically out of business for a year, right? And you have to have employees to keep your E2, so it's challenging. So it's really important to be working with a team that understands the whole scope of what you're doing, not just the immigration piece, but the business side and the real estate side and the management of the business and the success, and making sure that you're ready for renewal and that you start looking at that renewal from day one. This guy I was telling you about that gushes about me, he also calls me at least every other day to ask me a question about, is this okay with my E2? Is this okay with my E2? Is this okay with my E2? And I'm kind of like, listen, the guy brings me enough business. I'm happy to try to help him. And, you know, it's a lot because you have that added stress on running the business. It's a big deal. Okay. So I'm going to close these slides and I'm going to open my hopefully, let's see if I have it here. Okay, I'm going to stop share and I'm going to, I don't know, Nicolette, would you be so kind? Because I'm not looking at the chat. Could you tell me if there's any questions in the chat, please?
Can I ask a question or
Sure.
time? I spoke with a couple of other lawyers, right? Immigration lawyers, and they say that you can invest minimum of $100,000 and it's enough if you buy a company or even you can start a company.
Right, but that's not real estate. You can't invest $100,000 in real estate and expect.
If I buy a property management company, and I found one.
That's right. It's about 100,000. Yep.
Okay.
There are a
Okay.
couple of,
Thank
que-
Sure.
sorry, there are a couple of questions. Is E2 available for Europeans? I imagine that.
Yes.
Also.
Now it's going to depend on each country has their own, it's a treaty-based visa. Let me put a thing in the chat here for you to find out which countries qualify. And also you can grab a copy of my book. You definitely should grab a copy of it, Maria.
How we can get it?
I'm just putting it in the chat right now. If
There's-
you
at
don't
the
have my
very beginning
book, you should
of the
grab
chat,
it.
there's a link.
It's on Amazon and it's a great book, if I do say so myself. It's very informative. The second link here is to the list of treaty countries. So most European countries do qualify. Most South American countries do not. It's just because they don't have a treaty. So it just depends on, is there a treaty, is there not a treaty? Now, Kathy asked, what's the benefit of having an E2 visa for real estate investors? So I think we had spoken about this before, but basically, I would say 20% of my Canadian visa holders never plan to move to the US. As a matter of fact, specifically plan not to move to the US. Okay, one guy, he's in Calgary, Jay Facette, big influencer. His kids play hockey. He's not moving. He loves Calgary, but he runs events in the US. So he got the visa so he would have ease of transport, ease of moving across the border, being able to go back and forth without a problem, being able to manage his business without a problem, being able to visit his properties without a problem, being able to build US credit, get a social security number, and not have challenges every single time that you're dealing with a new investment or an opportunity because you have that visa in your passport. So it basically buys you, and especially for people from challenged countries like Venezuela or Colombia or Mexico, it's an insurance policy in your pocket because you have that visa for 5 years. You don't have a residency requirement attached to it. I have a colleague right now. He's been in Spain since the beginning of COVID. He's a lawyer originally from the GTA. He's in he's in upstate New York, and he has been living in Spain since COVID started, running his law practice from there. And he can, because he doesn't have a residency requirement. Until you have a green card, there's no residency requirement.
I have a question. It's Nicolette. What is
Sure.
the difference if, as an example, my children both have green cards? They are still at school, but I don't have anything. Is it possible to set up a company in their name because they have the green card already?
Yes, but that's not really going to help you, I don't believe, from a tax perspective. But yes, if how old are they? Over 18?
Yes.
Okay, then you could potentially do that. I just don't know what exactly the value would be. Michael, do you have any comments on that at all? Not to throw you under the bus, but I just thought you might know from a tax perspective.
I don't really see much there. You know,
Yeah.
if it's a good business, it's a good business, but there's no advantages. It's more, does it help with immigration? And you just said
Exactly.
probably not.
Yeah. I see
Thanks.
Monica asked, does the E2 help with the ability to get better financing? Every single day of the week, it's going to help you every day. Not only because you're going to be building US credit, you're going to have a US bank account, you're going to be able to get a social security number, but also because you have status. So suddenly you're no longer a foreign national. Now you're a visa holder and you're considered a non-resident alien, and you can qualify for different types of financing. So I'm going to share my slide here, which you guys are probably going to like, I think. And you're going to be like, oh boy, I need that to be a lot bigger, right? And I will. So this slide, can everybody see it? So this slide is about all of the primary business related visas. The ones that matter for you guys are the E2, the E1, and the EB5. The main one that we're talking about today is the E2, non-immigrant visa, not a direct path to a green card. There must be a treaty with the home country. You can set up or buy an existing US business. You have to have a substantial investment. You'll notice I put 100,000 with a question mark because it just depends on what the business is. and it has to be non-marginal. So you have to hire staff and have an economic impact, okay? An E1 is available for business owners, mainly, not as much for real estate investors, because an E1 is based on trade back and forth. So my guy in Calgary, for example, has an E1 because he's running events here and running events in Calgary. He does joint venture training. So he's doing a lot of back and forth, buying and selling goods and products from each company and also from other companies between the two countries. So the E1 is based on a substantial amount of trade between the home country and the US. And then the EB5 is a path to a green card, but that's a minimum investment at least of 900,000, and it's also a creation of 10 new jobs. That is hard and fast minimums. That's the only visa that has these specific minimums attached to it. Okay.
Marina.
Does anybody have any questions about this little slide? Okay. So I'm going to stop share and then we will go back to a little Q&A. Does anybody have any questions? Julie, what about you? You've been quiet. Sanjay, Dixon?
No, no questions, just valuable information.
My pleasure always, as you know. We'll eventually do a deal. Oh, and I'm going to add something else, and I'm not trying to toot XP's horn, but something that I have as my little sweet spot is kind of cool. So Canadians have trouble getting, not trouble, it's a challenge to get a real estate license in Canada, right? Because it's a long, arduous process. When I first became a lawyer there, all I had to do was sit for the exam and I didn't do it. So now I even have to go back to that Humber College, I think it is, right? In Toronto to get, it's a whole year to get your license, right? Okay, so what are the options? So for realtors that want to run a business or not run a business, I take that back, that want to continue to work as realtors or serve their clients and be referral realtors and be able to make money from real estate transactions, you can get your license in the US. There are certain states, Missouri, Montana, Washington, where you can get your US real estate license for the most part remotely without having a social security number. And then you can earn residual passive referral income even with your E2 visa. So the beauty of working with, let's say EXP, which is the company I work with, which is a cloud-based real estate company, is that we have those streams of income. You cannot come and represent buyers and sellers and investors because that's an independent contractor role. You're not allowed to do that unless it's directly related, let's say, to your property management business and you can build it in. But generally speaking, that is a separate role. But you are allowed to earn passive income even with the E2 visa. So the E2, you are limited to working for the company that you set up or that your partner sets up. You can't go and just work for anybody. Like you couldn't come and work for me or work for Dixon or work for Maria or work for Mitch. Okay, unless we're the ones that sponsor you. But if you have your real estate license, you can earn that passive income even after you get the visa. So it's just a kind of an additional thing that I have in my toolbox just because of the little loophole that I found. So does anybody have any questions? No questions?
Cohen, you mentioned something about the proof of funds, like you have to show where the money came from. Is that only when transferring between bank accounts, like transferring from a Canadian corp, for example, to a US corp?
No, if you're doing a visa, you have to show where all the money that was invested to get the visa came from.
Okay, but to transfer just between the two accounts should be fine, right?
That's irrelevant. That's about money laundering. You'll have to comply with the bank's rules, but that has nothing to do, You don't have to source your funds. You just have to have a clear path. I see Kathy asked, would it be beneficial to get the E2 if I already have an EIN from, yes, absolutely. EIN has nothing to do with anything other than it's like a social security number for your company. You can build credit for your company and your social security number. If you're not here and you don't have an E2, you can't really build credit. So an E2 is going to give you access to everything in the US that's otherwise closed to non-US residents. Anybody else? Okay, so
yes. Can I just last one?
Mm-hmm.
If let's say we get as a Canadians E2 visa,
Mhm.
do we lose
No.
our OHIP? No.
Oh, OHIP comes when you become a resident. OHIP, that's not something you asked me this before. OHIP has requirements of 5 months, only 5 in Ontario. It's not 6, it's 5. So as soon as you spend 6 or 7 or more months here, you lose OHIP.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, but that's nothing to do with immigration. That's just to do with OHIP.
Yes,
Believe me, that was the hardest thing I gave up.
I know.
But at the end of the day, you know, it all kind of pays off, I suppose. So I'm going to put in the chat a link to set up time in my calendar for a half-hour session. It is a paid session. If you paid to come on this webinar, then I will be returning that to you as part of, unfortunately, I don't have a link with that discount, but I'll refund you that difference. And if not, and you want to spend a half hour with me, grilling me, asking me questions, talking about next steps, figuring out if this makes sense for you, figuring out how to do it for you, figuring out who will do it with you. Look, I have a guy now, he's in North Bay. He wants to invest in Arkansas. He asked me to set him up with an investor savvy realtor in Arkansas. I'm in an Arkansas group within EXP. I don't know why I've been in this Arkansas group. It's very active. I didn't know why I was in it, but now I know, because here's a guy who was investing in Arkansas. I connected them this morning. They're thrilled. He's going to go look at, he's looking at some apartment buildings. So this is what I do. It's just kind of part and parcel of me servicing my clients. So, would love the opportunity to work with you guys. Actually, as I'm talking, I see Little Rock, Arkansas, literally calling on the phone. That's hysterical. That's very funny. Big brother is watching, right? Monica, any questions? Kathy, Sanjay? No, I don't. I'm sorry, Kathy. I don't quantify other people's advice. An investment in your own property to rent out on Airbnb. I mean, one Airbnb is not going to work. That's just too marginal. You're not going to have enough income unless it's a humongous property that you're breaking into multiple units or renting out for like 15,000 a day, which does happen in Orlando, for example, some of those properties with the themed rooms and so on. The cost for the session, I think, is $247. I think. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I will be sending this recording to you all, and I'm here to help you with your next steps and figuring out for you that are in the U.S. how to potentially expand your business beyond our borders, which I also do. And second, if you're outside of the U.S., how to get into the U.S. the right way, so you don't end up paying double tax, because that's the worst. I have a guy right now who told me he paid $100,000 that was avoidable to the CRA. And I said, well, don't you want to set up your entities? No. I'm like, why would you give them $100,000 rather than paying a few thousand to set this up right? It's penny wise and pound foolish. My pleasure, Mitch. Thank you. I'm glad I could be of service to you guys. And please stay safe and warm, and go Leafs. Okay, I said it. Bye.
Thank you very much, Lauren.
Sure,
Thanks so
of
much.
course. Thank you.
Great.